disappointed in my umbrella. I told mother black with a white handle, but she forgot and bought a green one with an ugly yellowish handle. It is strong and neat, so I ought not to complain, but I know I shall feel ashamed of it. Beside Annie's silk one with a gold top, sighed Meg. Surfing at the little umbrella with great decipher. Change it, advised Joe. I won't be so silly, or hurt Mommy's feelings when she took so much um, pains to pains to get my things. It is a nonsensical notion of mine, and I'm not going to give up to it. My silk stockings and two pairs of new gloves are my comfort. You are a dear to lend me yours, Joe. I feel so rich and sort of elegant with two new pairs, and the old ones cleaned up for common. And Meg took a refreshing peep at her glove box. Annie Moffat Annie Moffat has blue and pink bows on her nightcaps. Would you put some on mine? She asked as Beth brought up a pile of snowy muslins, fresh from Hannah's hands. No, I wouldn't, for the smart caps won't match the plain gowns without any trimming on them. Poor folks shouldn't rake, said Joe decidedly. I wonder if I shall ever be happy enough to have real lace on my clothes and bows on my caps, said Meg impatiently. You said the other day that you'd be perfectly happy if you could only go to Annie Moffat's, observed Beth in her quiet way. So I did. Well, I am happy and I won't fret, but it does seem as if the more one gets, the more one wants, doesn't it? There now. The trays are ready and everything in but my party dress, which I shall leave for mother to pack, said Meg, cheering up as she glanced from the half-filled trunk to the many times pressed and mended white tarlatan, which she called her party dress with an important air. The next day was fine, and Meg departed in style for a fortnight of novelty and pleasure. Mrs. March had consented to the visit rather reluctantly, fearing that Margaret would come back more discontented than she went. But she had begged so hard, and Sally had promised to take good care of her, and a little pleasure seemed so delightful after a winter of exam. What is this? Exam work that the mother yielded, and the daughter went to take her first taste of fashionable life. The Moffats were very fashionable and simple. Meg was rather daunted at first by the splendor of the house and the elegance of its occupants. But they were kindly people in spite of the fearfulness, I think, life they led, and soon put their guests at her ease. Perhaps Meg felt without understanding why that they were not particularly cultivated or intelligent people, and that all their gilding could not quite conceal the ordinary material of which they were made. It certainly was agreeable to fare sumptuously, drive in a fine carriage, wear her best frock every day and do nothing but enjoy yourself. Oh wow, nothing but enjoy herself. Let me highlight a word. Was it? Frock. This one is new. It suited her exactly, and soon she began to imitate the manners and conversation of those about her. To put on little airs and graces, use French phrases, crimp her hair, take in her dresses, and talk about the fashions as well as she could. The more she saw of Annie Mountford's pretty things, the more to be rich. Home, bare, and dismal at thought of it. Work grew harder than ever, and she felt that she was a very destitute and much injured girl, in spite of the new gloves and silk stockings. She had not much time for repining, however, for the three young girls were busily employed in having a good time. They shopped, walked, rode, and called all day, went to theatres and operas, or frolicked at home in the evening for many friends, and knew how to entertain them. Her older sisters were very fine young ladies, and one was engaged, which was extremely interesting and romantic, Meg thought. Let me highlight this one. Where am I? Where am I? Yeah, interesting and romantic, Meg thought. Mr. Moffat was a fat, jolly old gentleman who knew her father, and Moffat a fat, jolly old lady who took as great as a bow wow, a fancy to Meg as her daughter had done. Everyone petted her, and Daisy, as they called her, was in a fair way to have her head turned. When the evening for the small party came, she found that the poplin wouldn't do at all, for the other girls were putting on thin dresses and making themselves very fine indeed. So out came the tartan, looking older, limper, and shabbier than ever. Beside Sally's crisp new one, Meg saw the girls glance at it and then at one another, and her cheeks began to burn, for with all her gentleness she was very proud. No one said a word about it, but Sally offered to do her hair, and Annie to tie her sash, and Belly, the engaged sister, praised her white arms, but in their kindness Meg saw only pity for her poverty, and her heart felt very heavy as she stood by herself, while the others laughed, chattered, and flew about like gauzy butterflies. The hard, bitter feeling was getting pretty bad when the maid brought in a box of flowers. Before she could speak, Annie had the cover off, and all were exclaiming at the lovely roses, heath, and fern within. It is for Belly, of course. George always sends her some, but these are altogether ravishing, cried Annie with a great sniff. They are for Miss March, the man said, and here is a note, holding it to Meg. What fun! Who are they from? Didn't know you had a lover, cried the girl, fluttering about Meg in a high state of curiosity. The note is from Mother, and the flowers from Laurie, said Meg simply. Yet much gratified that he had not forgotten her. "Oh, indeed," said Annie, with a funny look, as Meg slipped the note in her pocket as a sort of talisman against envy, vanity, and false pride, for the few laughing words had done her good, and the flowers cheered her up by their beauty. Feeling almost happy again, she laid by a few ferns and roses for herself, and quickly made up the rest in dainty bouquets for the breasts, hair, or skirts of her friends, offering them so prettily that Clara, the elder sister, told her she was the sweetest little thing she ever saw, and they looked quite charmed with her small attention. Somehow the kind act finished her despondency, and when all the rest went to show themselves to Mrs. Moffat, she saw a happy, bright-eyed face in the mirror as she laid her ferns against her rippling hair and fastened the roses in the dress that didn't strike her as so very shabby now. She enjoyed herself very much that evening. Everyone was very kind, and she had 3 compliments. Annie made her sing, and someone said she had a remarkably fine voice. Major Lincoln asked who the fresh little girl with the beautiful eyes was, and Mr. Moffat insisted on dancing with her because she didn't doodle, doodle, but had some spring in her. Write this one. Okay, 12. But had some spring in her, as he gracefully express it. So altogether, she had a very nice time till she overheard a bit of a conversation which disturbed her extremely. Alright. Extremely. She was sitting just inside the conservatory, waiting for her partner to bring her an ice, when she heard a voice ask on the other side of the flowery wall, "How old is he? 16 or 17? I should say," replied another voice. "It would be a grand thing for one of those girls, wouldn't it? Sally says they are very intimate now, and the old man quite dotes on them. Mrs. M has made her plans, I dare say, and will play her cards well. Early as it is, the girl evidently doesn't think of it yet," said Mrs. Moffat. She told that fib about her mamma as if she didn't know, and coloured up when the flowers came, quite prettily, poor thing. She'd be so nice if she was only got up in style. Do you think she'd be offended if we offered to lend her a dress for Thursday?" asked another voice. "She's proud, but I don't believe she'd mind, for that dowdy tartan is all she has got. She may tear it tonight, and that will be a good excuse for offering a decent one." Here Meg's friend appeared, to find her looking much flushed and rather agitated. She was proud, and her pride was useful just then, for it helped her hide her mortification, anger, and disgust at what she had just heard. For innocent and unsuspicious as she was, she could not help understanding the gossip of her friends. She tried to forget it, but she could not, and kept repeating to herself, "Mrs. M has made her plans. That fib about her mamma and Dodie Tartan," till she was ready to cry and rush home to tell her troubles and ask for advice. As that was impossible, she did her best to seem cheerful, and being rather excited, she succeeded so well that no one dreamed what an effort she was making. She was very glad when it was all over, and she was quite in her bed, where she could think and wonder and fume till her head ached and her hot cheeks were cooled by a few natural tears. Those foolish yet well-meant words opened a new world to Meg, and much disturbed the peace of the old one in which, till now, she had lived as happily as a child. Her innocent friendship with Laurie was spoiled by the silly speeches she had overheard. Her faith in her mother was a little shaken by the worldly plans attributed to her by Mrs. Muffat, who judged others by herself, and the sensible resolution to be contented with the simple wardrobe which suited a poor man's daughter was weakened by the unnecessary pity of girls who thought a shabby dress one of the greatest calamities under heaven. Is it heaven or heaven? Heaven. Poor Meg had a restless night and got up heavy-eyed, unhappy, half resentful toward her friends, and half ashamed of herself for not speaking out frankly and setting everything right. Everybody dawdled that morning, and it was noon before the girls found energy enough even to take up their worsted work. Something in the manner of her friends struck Meg at once. They treated her with more respect, she thought, took quite a tender interest in what she said, and looked at her with eyes that plainly betrayed curiosity. All this surprised and flattered her, though she did not understand it till Miss Bell looked up from her writing and said with a sentimental air, "Daisy, dear, I've sent an invitation to your friend, Mr. Lawrence, for Thursday. We should like to know him, and it is only a proper compliment to you." Meg coloured, but a mischievous fancy the girls made her reply demurely. Is it demurely? Dunno. "You are very kind, but I'm afraid he won't come." "Why not?" "Cherry." "I don't know is this word?" asked Mrs. Bell. "He's too old." "My child, what do you mean? What is his age? I beg to know," cried Mrs. Clara. "Nearly 70, I believe," answered Meg, counting stitches to hide the merriment in her eyes. "You sly creature, of course we meant the young man," exclaimed Miss Bell, laughing. "There isn't any. Laurie is only a little boy," and Meg laughed, also at the odd look which the sisters exchanged as she thus described her supposed lover. "About your age," Nan said. "Nearer, my sister shows." "I am 17 in August," returned Meg, tossing her head. "It is very nice of him to send you flowers, isn't it?" said Annie, looking wise about nothing. "Yes, he often does to all of us, for the house is full and we are so fond of them. My mother and old Mr. Lawrence are friends, you know, so it is quite natural that we children should play together," and Meg hoped they would say no more. "It is evident Daisy isn't out yet," said Mrs. Clara to Belle with a nod. "Quite a pastoral state of innocence all around," returned Mrs. Bell with a shrug. I'm going out to get some little matters for my girls. Can I do anything for you, young ladies? Asked Mrs. Moffat, lumbering in like an elephant in silk and lace. No, thank you, ma'am, replied Sally. I've got my new pink silk for Thursday and don't want a thing. Nor I, began Meg, but stopped because it occurred to her that she did want several things and could not have them. What shall you wear? Asked Sally. My old white one again, if I can mend it to be seen. It got sadly torn last night, said Meg, trying to speak quite easily, but feeling very uncomfortable. Why don't you send home for another? Said Sally, who was not an observing young lady. I haven't got any other. It cost Meg an effort to say that, but Sally did not see it and exclaimed in amiable surprise, Only that? How funny! She did not finish her speech, for Betty shook her head at her and broke in, saying kindly, Not at all. What is the use of having a lot of dresses when she isn't out? There's no need of sending home, Daisy, even if you had a dozen, for I've got a sweet blue silk laid away, outgrown, and you shall wear it to please me, won't you, dear? You are very kind, but I don't mind my old dress. If you don't, it does well enough for a little girl like me, said Meg. Now, do let me please myself by dressing you up in style. I admire to do it, and you'd be a regular little beauty with a touch here and there. I shan't let anyone see you till you are done, and then we'll burst upon them like Cinderella and her godmother going to the ball, said Belly in her persuasive tone. Meg couldn't refuse the offer so kindly made, for a desire to see if she would be a little beauty after touching up caused her to accept and forget all her former uncomfortable feelings toward the Moffats. On Thursday evening, Belly shut herself up with her maid, and between them they turned Meg into a fine lady. They crimped and curled her hair, they polished her neck and arms with some fragrant powder, touched her lips with coralline salve to make them redder, and Hortense would have added a soupçon of rouge if Meg had not rebelled. They laced her into a sky blue dress which was so tight she could hardly breathe, and so low in the neck that modest Meg blushed at herself in the mirror. A set of silver filigree was added, bracelets, necklace, brooch, and even earrings for hotness. Tied them on with a bit of pink silk which did not show, a cluster of tea rosebuds at the bottom, and she reconciled Meg to the display of her pretty white shoulders and a pair of high-heeled blue silk boots satisfied the last wish of her heart. A lace handkerchief, a plummy fan, and a bouquet in a silver holder finished her off, and Miss Pelly surveyed her with the satisfaction of a little girl with a newly dressed doll. We highlight this one. Okay. How many? 24. Oh wow. With the satisfaction of a little girl with a newly dressed doll. Maid Moseley is charmante. This is, I think, France. Is she not? cried Hortense, clasping her hands in unaffected rapture. "Come and show yourself," said Miss Belly, leading the way to the room where the others were waiting, as Meg went rustling after her, with her long skirts trailing, her earrings tingling, her curls waving, and her heart beating. She felt as if her fun had really begun at last, for the mirror had plainly told her that she was a little beauty. Her friends repeated the pleasing phrase enthusiastically, and for several minutes she stood like the jackdaw in the fable, enjoying her borrowed plums, while the rest chattered like a party of magpies. "While I dress, do you drill her, Nan, in the management of her skirt and those French heels, or she will trip herself up. Take yourself a butterfly in the middle of that white Barbie, and catch up that long curl on the left side of her head, Clara, and don't any of you disturb the charming work of my hands," said Belly, as she hurried away, looking well pleased with her success. I think I need to check how I would pronounce this name correctly. "I'm afraid to go down. I feel so stiff and half-dressed," said Meg to Sally as the bell rang and Mrs. Moffat sent to ask the young ladies to appear at once. "You don't look a bit like yourself, but you are very nice. I'm nowhere beside you, for Belly has heaps of taste, and you are quite French. I assure you, let your flowers hang. Don't be so careful of them, and be sure you don't trip," returned Sally, trying not to care that Meg was prettier than herself. Keeping that warning carefully in mind, Margaret got safely downstairs and sailed into the drawing rooms where the Moffats and a few early guests were assembled. She very soon discovered that there is a charm about fine clothes which attracts a certain class of people and secures their respect. Several young ladies who had taken no notice of her before were very affectionate all of a sudden. Several young gentlemen who had only stared at her at the other party now not only stared but asked to be introduced, and said all manner of foolish but agreeable things to her, and several old ladies who sat on the sofas and criticized the rest of the party inquired who she was with an air of interest. She heard Mrs. Moffat reply to one of them, "Daisy March, father a colonel in the army, one of our first families, but reverses of fortune, you know, intimate friends of Lawrence's. Sweet creature, I assure you. My Ned is quite wild about her." "Dear me," said the old lady, putting up her glass for another observation of Meg, who tried to look as if she had not heard and been rather shocked at Mrs. Moffat's fibs. The odd feeling did not pass away, but she imagined herself acting the new part of a fine lady, and so got on pretty well, though the tight dress gave her a side ache. The train kept getting under her feet, and she was in constant fear lest her earrings should fly off and get lost or broken. She was flirting her fan and laughing at the feeble strokes of a young gentleman who tried to be witty when she suddenly stopped laughing and looked confused. For just opposite, she saw Laurie. He was staring at her with undisguised surprise and disapproval also, she thought, for though he bowed and smiled, yet something in his eyes made her blush and wish she had her old on. Okay, and wish she had her old dress on. To complete her confusion, she saw Billy nudge Annie and both glanced for her to Laurie, who she was happy to see looked unusually boyish and shy. Silly creatures to put such thoughts into my head. I won't care for it, or let it change me a bit, thought Meg, and rustled across the room to shake hands with her friend. I'm glad you've come. I was afraid you wouldn't, she said with her most ground-up air. Jo wanted me to come and tell her how you looked, so I did, answered Laurie, without turning his eyes upon her, though he half smiled at her maternal tone. What shall you tell her? Asked Meg, full of curiosity to know his opinion of her, yet feeling ill at ease with him for the first